Ryan, what's on your radar?
Well, Sean Patrick Maloney this week pulled off what might be the most brazenly selfish district hop in American political history. Now, to win that coveted medal of opportunism is a truly spectacular achievement, given that Maloney is operating in an industry, politics, that is populated almost exclusively by some of the most craven, attention-seeking people in our society. Now, the number of different ways that Maloney's move has shocked even the most cynical observers of politics is itself shocking. So if you don't follow internal Democratic politics, here's what you missed. So a judge recently threw out the congressional map drawn by Democrats in the state of New York and drew a new one with more Republican seats. Maloney represents a district in New York that was slightly redrawn, but still leans Democratic. About 3/4 of the 18th district is already represented by Maloney. It's essentially his old district, though his house was drawn into the 17th district. Now, there's no law in New York that you have to live in the district you represent, and Maloney living nearby would be fine, especially since he's well known there and he's popular. But instead of running for his own seat, he announced immediately that he'd be running in the 17th district, most of which is currently represented by freshman Mondaire Jones, and is a bit bluer than the 16th. So it's a bit bluer than the 18th, so it's safer. Now, so let's start to count the ways that this is already an unbelievably selfish move. Start with the startling fact that Maloney ran for and won the position of Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee chairman. So his entire job is to make sure that Democrats hold their narrow House majority, or the Biden legislative agenda is completely dead. Well, normally, the job of the DCCC chair is to recruit the right candidates for the right districts and convince people to run in places where winning isn't a sure thing. Maloney is exactly the type of candidate a DCCC chair would try to recruit to run in the 18th district, and Maloney couldn't even convince Maloney to run there. Now, if Maloney, the DCCC chair, is running scared from a district that leans blue, what message does that send to members serving in toss-up districts or ones that lean slightly red? Now, Maloney, however, doesn't want to primary Mondaire Jones. He wants Jones to step aside for him. When Jones's staffer sent the Maloney staffer a pissy text message, the Maloney staffer shot back, "Don't you guys live in the 16th district?" And yes, Jones technically now lives in the new 16th. That might change when the new district lines come out this afternoon, but he represents most of the 17th district. The 17th is his real district, and Maloney knows that. So Democrats barely have any room for error, so every seat matters, unless he's just assuming that they're going to lose 30, so nothing matters. Now, if Maloney gets his wish and Jones runs in the 16th district, that would pit him against Jamaal Bowman. Bowman, a member of the extended squad, put out a statement Thursday saying he's running in his seat no matter what. He also didn't mince words, saying, quote, "Let's also be clear about this. Two black men who worked hard to represent their communities, who fight hard for their constituents in Congress and advocate for dire needs in our communities, should not be pitted against each other, all because Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney wants to have a slightly easier district for himself. The Democratic Party should not tolerate or condone those who try to dismantle and tear down black power in Congress. I'm proud that many of my Democratic colleagues have stood up and made clear that this is wrong, and I encourage more to do the same. The solution is simple. Congressman Maloney should run in his own district. I'll be running in mine," unquote. Now, what's interesting is that Representative Richie Torres has been perhaps the most outspoken on this issue. What makes it interesting coming from him is that Torres has been in an open war with the New York left for several years now. He's also one of the closest allies of the pro-Israel lobby in the caucus, and that lobby hates Jamaal Bowman more than anybody else for the crime of unseating Eliot Engel in 2020. They'd no doubt love to see Mondaire Jones pushed into Bowman's district and knock him out of Congress. Now, although Torres here is a bit biased because he doesn't actually want Bowman jumping from the 16th into the 15th district, which is his. So Maloney's allies, meanwhile, they have suggested to reporters that Mondaire Jones is actually more, quote, ideologically suited to a different district. What they mean by that is pretty clear, and Torres ripped the mask off of it, saying, quote, "The thinly veiled racism here is profoundly disappointing. A black man is ideologically ill-suited to represent a Westchester County district that he represents presently and won decisively in 2020? Outrageous." Yeah, so not only is it racist, it's just objectively not true. Jones ran in a very competitive primary in 2020, and he won the primary in a landslide. Then in the general election, he outperformed Joe Biden there. On what basis is he not suited for the district? He grew up there, raised by a single mom who cleaned houses in the district, and now those people are represented by her son in Congress. And you know what? They love it. Biden carried the district by 20 points, but Jones carried it by 24 points. That makes him more in step with the district than Joe Biden. Now here's another way that Maloney's move hurts the party. To beat somebody as popular as Jones on his own home turf, Maloney will need an insane amount of money. That's the only way most centrist candidates are able to knock out progressives, by massively outspending them and running ads tearing them down, or having outside super PACs doing that. Any money that's spent helping Maloney beat Jones is money not being spent helping a vulnerable Democrat beat a Republican. And running a campaign against Jones will be extremely time-consuming for Maloney, when his actual job is to be traveling the country raising money for other Democrats. So AOC, meanwhile, has called for Maloney to step down, mocking him for not being able to, quote, take his redistricting on the chin. Speaker Pelosi was asked Thursday if she was concerned this could hurt the party, and she waved it off.
They'll find out what district that is on Friday when the announcements made. The public period of comment ended yesterday. Friday they'll make an announcement. That's what they.
And this doesn't affect the party at large as you're trying to hold it up.
Not at all.
Well, why not though? You said I can understand not getting involved in New York.
It doesn't. We have a great chairman of the DCCC. He's a master of the 3 M's. The mobilization on the ground to get out the vote. The messaging that is non-menacing, that fuels the get out the vote, and the money, the resources needed to do that.
So how can she be so blasé about this? It is on its face crazy to have the DCCC chair costing seats and soaking up all his time attacking other Democrats. So why does she not think that's nuts? So her nonchalance only makes sense if she and Maloney think that they can bully Mondaire Jones into leaving his district and instead challenging Bowman. And according to sources familiar with Jones's campaign strategy, he's been preparing for the possibility of a primary challenge with Bowman for the last year. And he has regularly told donors that he needed to build up a war chest for that possibility. He didn't say he wanted it to happen, but he told people it might happen and he needed to be ready. But if it happens now, it won't be because he's forced into it. It'll be because he chooses it. The choice is a brutal one, and it's the most naked deal with the devil scenario I've ever seen in politics. The party establishment, in the form of the DCCC chair, is offering him this. If you hand over your district to Sean Patrick Maloney and go off and execute your friend, you will have proven your loyalty, and you'll be a member in good standing in our society. You will hold that seat as long as you want, as long as nobody primaries you from the left, of course, and if they do, we'll have endless money to try to protect you. The only price is that you'll know for the rest of your career that it was built on that decision in that moment. The whole thing feels like some sick, sadistic initiation into a club that nobody with any moral character should want to be a part of. So I asked Jones about all of this last night, and he told me, quote, "We don't even have a final map. Everyone needs to chill." The final map comes out later today. And so we'll find out. Maybe the judge moves everybody back into their districts. Maybe Sean Patrick Maloney gets enough criticism from his colleagues that he backs off, and then Mondaire Jones stays in his own district. But right now, it's looking like there could be a Jones-Bowman primary as a result of Maloney's move here. You ever seen anything like this on the Republican side?
I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, period. It's so, and it's not to say it's out of character for the sort of Nancy Pelosi Democratic establishment. It's not at all. I mean, running it like the mob, basically, you have to it's insane. But it's also really interesting because of the district and the nature of the district, in that it's almost, I'm more tempted to say that this is classist than it is racist, right? That like this ideology it is simply not suited for Westchester County. Like nobody could possibly, want this anti-establishment, anti-capitalist ideology in Westchester. And it's interesting because, as you say, he outperformed Joe Biden, and this to me gets to a very central problem with the Democratic Party, is that the party establishment does not understand its own base. It doesn't understand its own voters, and it doesn't even understand the country more broadly. They don't understand why people can run on these anti-establishment platforms and do well in places that they might not expect, Westchester County, wherever it is. And these ridiculous loyalty tests are, I mean, I don't know. I actually think this is such a bad look. It is so like Shakespearean that I wouldn't be surprised if everybody does kind of chill for your conversation there and Maloney backs off, because this looks really bad.
Yeah, and we spend a lot of time, or at least I spend a lot of time harping on the kind of fecklessness and incompetence of the Democratic Party establishment. But then we're reminded in moments like this that they're not feckless, they're not incompetent. They have enormous power, they have immense political skills. It's just that they only deploy those talents against the left. That's what they're enthusiastic about. When it comes to taking on Republicans, all of a sudden they become utterly incompetent.
Well, and it's all about power. And this is a good example. It's all about power, not about like actually doing anything. It's, in this case, it is clearly just about the power of Sean Patrick Maloney, and not in the service of any particular cause other than Democratic Party power or the establishment's party power. And Ryan, I'm kind of curious if you think the real motivation here was to pit, to give Maloney an easier district, or to pit Jones and Bowman against each other. Do you think there was like any particular thing that took priority?
I think it's both, but I think the top priority is revenge against Bowman.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
It sounds like. So it might result in an easier district for Maloney, but like it's also just nakedly just a power grab against the anti-establishment wing of the Democratic Party. And again, this is not like entirely surprising. This goes back years, especially for Nancy Pelosi. And I feel like there are a lot of leaders of the Democratic establishment that have been sort of raised in her image. And Sean Patrick Maloney seems to be one of them.
Yeah, and we'll get the maps later today, and Jones really has a kind of life-changing decision in front of him. We'll wait to see what he decides.
Unbelievable.
Looking forward to your radar up next.